regional policies, planning, and deployments to support automated vehicles. My name is Tony Cradafil. I'm with the Michigan Department of Transportation, and together with Virginia Langham from the Virginia Department of Transportation, we serve as co-chairs of a subcommittee on connected and automated vehicles under the Transportation Research Board's Standing Committee on Regional Transportation Systems Management and Operations, or RITSMO. I also chair the Technical Advisory Committee for the National Operations Center of Excellence. This webinar, coincidentally, is being co-sponsored by the Connected and Automated Vehicle Subcommittee of RITSMO and the National Operations Center of Excellence. I want to thank the Center for their assistance, in particular Nilu Parvanashtiani for her help in making the technical arrangements and running the webinar behind the scenes, and Adam Hops for helping to promote the event. I understand the Center will be recording the webinar and including it on their webpage for future reference. Today's webinar will explore how various areas of the country and various levels of regionalism are approaching planning and deployment strategies to prepare themselves for an automated vehicle environment. We hope that by the end of today's session you will be better able to examine planning and deployment strategies to support the advancement of automated vehicles focused on multi-jurisdictional regional contexts, be able to compare and contrast the needs of various regions across America's organizations as they grapple with how to prepare for greater numbers of automated vehicles in the next 10 years, and to identify peer agencies that are collaborating to support the advancement of automated vehicle technologies and environments. During the webinar, we will hear from several presenters. Your phone or computer audio should already be muted automatically, so you will not be able to ask questions verbally. Please type your questions in the question pod on the right-hand side of your screen. You can type questions at any time, and after each presentation, we'll take a few questions. And then if there are more than a few questions, we'll save those for the end so that we allow enough time for all the presentations to occur. The Standing Committee on RITSMO is a committee of the Transportation Research Board that considers transportation systems management and operations in a regional context. The committee focuses on sharing regional approaches to transportation problems by identifying research opportunities, creating knowledge, and disseminating information. So before we hear from our presenters, I want to introduce Les Jacobson with WSP, who chairs the RITSMO committee, to share any additional opening remarks. Les?
Thanks, Tony. I thought I would just, for those of you who are not familiar with the Regional TISMO Committee, I thought I would provide a few slides that discuss what the
Les, I think we lost your audio, so why don't we just check that real quick. Otherwise, we'll move on and we'll come back to you, Les, before we conclude today. All right, it doesn't sound like it's been restored yet, so we'll come back, Les, and you can address those slides. So at this point, I'll turn things over to Virginia Langham, as I mentioned, who co-chairs the RITSMO subcommittee on connected and automated vehicles, to provide a brief overview of our subcommittee and then introduce our speaker. Well, now we can hear you.
Okay.
Want to try one more time, Les?
Yeah, sorry about that. As I was saying, our mission then is to advance the state of the practice and champion innovative concepts that will help. We've had a pretty focused kind of activity within research to champion some of the regional TISMO research and to share knowledge of effective practices and related research. I would say that probably one of our biggest recent accomplishments was we were selected as a Blue Ribbon Committee for Advancing Research within TRB, And we have regular coordination meetings with AASHTO committees and with other TRB committees, with ITE, and of course with the National Operations Center of Excellence. Through that, we prepare needs statements and synthesis topics and help to coordinate research among these different groups. I don't want to get into this in a lot of depth. We have a lot of committees, but our research committee is made up of the subcommittee chairs of all of the subcommittees. So we generate these ideas really from the committee level up through our research subcommittee, and then on to the appropriate locations. And with that, I think I will turn it back over to Tony.
Great, thank you, Les. So at this point, we'll turn things over to Virginia Langham. As I mentioned, she serves as co-chair of the RITSMO Connected and Automated Vehicle Subcommittee with me, and she'll give a brief overview of the subcommittee and then introduce our speakers today. Virginia?
Okay, thank you, Tony. Hi, everyone. I'm Virginia Langham with Virginia Department of Transportation. Our Regional TSMO Subcommittee on Connected and Automated Vehicles is a relatively new subcommittee to our larger committee as a whole. We first formed the committee about a year ago, and so we are just getting it going, really. So if you're interested in participating, please let us know. Our subcommittee our mission is focused on advancing research and dialogue to address the interjurisdictional aspects of the deployment of connected and autonomous vehicles for the benefit of the transportation industry and to more effectively realize the safety and mobility benefits of modern transportation technology as a whole. Our scope as a subcommittee is pretty broad. We want to support our other regional TSMO subcommittees and other TRB committees when they encounter issues related to connected and autonomous vehicles by serving as a sounding board to consider the impact of connected and autonomous vehicles and other subject matter issues. We also work to propose and oversee research projects to address CAV impacts on other transportation subjects, modes, interactions, and across jurisdictions. And we also want to provide resources for other committees and subcommittees to educate and inform members of connected and automated vehicle topics and advancements, such as the webinars that we're having today. So with that, we have a link to the website for our committee it should be one of the pods that you're seeing on the screen. So if you're interested in more information, please check out that website. And with that, without any further ado, I would like to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker today will be Bill Caruso, who's the Technical Programs Director at the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, or AMPO. Bill has over 9 years of experience in public policy at the federal, state, and local level. At AMPO, Bill works on the technical issues MPOs are involved with in the transportation planning process. He directs AMPO's federal grant awards and manages the activities of AMPO's air quality, travel modeling, performance-based planning and programming, and connected and autonomous vehicles working groups. In addition, Bill manages the AMPO Technical Committee and directs AMPO's MPO research efforts. Prior to working at AMPO, Bill worked at Building America's Future for more than 5 years, where he served as a senior staff member and provided infrastructure and transportation policy guidance and support to the executive staff and co-chairs. Bill has also worked for United States Senator Charles Schumer of New York, where he served as Deputy Director of the Hudson Valley Regional Office. Bill is a native of Saratoga Springs, New York, and holds a bachelor's degree in political science from Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, and a master's degree in sustainable urban planning from the George Washington University. I'll hand it over to you now, Bill. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Virginia, and thank you to the RITSMO Committee and the National Operations Center of Excellence for giving AMPO the opportunity to present on today's webinar. Hello, everyone, and good morning or good afternoon. As Virginia mentioned, I am the Technical Programs Director at AMPO here in Washington, D.C. Just a little bit about our organization. Let's get the slides here. A little bit about AMPO. We are a nonprofit organization founded in 1994. As I mentioned, we are located in Washington, D.C., and we represent most of the MPOs across the country. We are a membership organization, so not all of the MPOs are a part of our organization, but we do work very closely with our sister organizations, NARC and NATO, who also have members of the MPO community. AMPO seeks to meet the needs of the MPOs, whether it's policy or technical. And then one way for us to do that is through our technical working groups. As Virginia mentioned, I oversee a variety of topic areas which we have working groups for, one of which is the Connected and Autonomous Vehicle Planning Working Group. I'd like to thank FHWA for providing some support for us to be able to put that together and have that up and running for the past year or so. Through our working groups, we seek to build capacity, provide a peer exchange opportunity, and advance the state of practice on each of these issues, and including a couple of more. That being said, we also seek to leverage the benefits that CVAV provides through excuse me, my slide's not working here. There we go. So the CVAV planning group specifically, we seek to leverage the benefits, as I was mentioning, address knowledge gaps, identify challenges and opportunities, working closely with USDOT and state DOTs, the MPOs, and additional stakeholders. So speaking of leveraging the benefits, as we all know, there are a handful of them that have been identified, safety being kind of the number one among many others. And so we are trying as a working group to figure out how, through the MPO planning process, we can leverage those benefits and integrate them into the planning process and products. So a little bit about the working group participants. In thinking through how we were going to assemble this group of 15 to 20 core members, there were a couple of things that we wanted to be sure to achieve. One was find diverse representation throughout the MPO community, both in size and geography, and also make sure to incorporate a variety of professional backgrounds, whether it's policy, operations, modeling, ITS, et cetera, so that we could be sure to cover all of kind of the considerations that need to be taken into account when thinking about CVAV planning and integrating that into the planning process, both the engineering side, the planning side, policy side, et cetera. So through our scope of work under this working group with support from FHWA, we were provided with 4 in-person meetings. The first meeting took place in April of 2017 and had a MPO focus, really trying to understand what the current state of practice was, how MPOs were approaching this, what they were identifying as challenges and opportunities, et cetera. Our second meeting took place over the summer in conjunction with AASHTO's summer meeting. We had a half-day workshop with the MPOs and the state DOTs to talk through the MPO-DOT relationship and how we could coordinate and collaborate on this particular issue. Our third meeting took place here in Washington, D.C., over at USDOT. We were fortunate to meet with a handful of various USDOT agencies and offices within DOT. Our fourth and final meeting will take place in early 2018, and we'll seek to have a conversation with the private sector and understand how the public-private sector can coordinate and collaborate going forward. And all of this will ultimately culminate in a 2018 National Symposium. It will be a one-day symposium that we will host, and we will open that up to all of the transportation planning community. So we will certainly invite everyone here today, and we'll put a call out for not only participation, but also presentation. So stay tuned for details on that. Within as I mentioned, with our first meeting, it was to kind of understand the challenges, opportunities, and state of practice from the MPO perspective. There were a handful of kind of buckets that were identified, many of which I'm sure you all have discussed and identified yourselves. And this was specifically kind of understanding what this meant for as I mentioned, the MPO planning process. So obviously quite a bit of unknowns and uncertainty. Data is a big challenge. managing perceptions and expectations, staying informed. I think that is an important piece, and why I appreciate Virginia inviting us to participate on today's webinar and hosting such a webinar. There's so much information and so many pilots, test beds, going on across the industry. It's really hard to keep up with everything, and so through our group, we're doing our best to make sure that we're exchanging information not only within the MPO community, but with others such as the I-95 Corridor Coalition, who we'll hear from in just a bit. And I mentioned we work closely with many of our other practitioner organizations. Building capacity within the MPOs, this is certainly a challenge when you think about the different size of MPOs. You have MPOs that range from one staff person all the way to up over 100. And so just given those resource challenges, how can MPOs work together to be able to make the best of the resources that they have? Regulations and guidance, we spent quite a bit of time discussing the challenges of DSRC and some of these other pending regulations that are currently sitting with FHWA, and the challenges that could be associated with having a national standard versus kind of a patchwork of different guidance and different standards and regulations, and what that could mean for regional planning as all of this comes online. And then certainly building partnerships. I will also mention something that has come up in the conversation for the DSRC and kind of broadband 5G conversation. Certainly the smaller MPOs in more rural communities are concerned that they don't even have broadband or access to 4G at the moment, let alone things like 5G. And so there's definitely some concern from those communities on not being left out and how all of this will impact those communities. I did see a report recently from NATO, the National Association of Development Organizations, who shared some numbers with us and also represent a lot of the rural communities. Through some peer-to-peer exchange workshops that they conducted over the summer, they identified that CVAV would provide an economic development opportunity for them, and so that seems to be kind of the approach that they're taking. This is from a presentation given by Stephen Buckley from WSP. It was given to NIMTIC, our New York City MPO, over the summer. And it just does a nice job of laying out where manufacturers stand on moving through the SEE chart on automation. I want to spend a slide or two just kind of flashing back to managing expectations and perceptions, not only with the public and private sector, but certainly with MPO boards and elected officials. We as a group have spent quite a bit of time talking about how to manage expectations within your local community and your elected officials. There are kind of two ends of the spectrum. Some folks would like to be kind of the innovators and be out ahead of this, and others are a little bit more hesitant and kind of want to follow the leader a little bit. So just thinking through kind of the OEMs and where they stand on this, but then also understanding where your community stands and what the public perception is. So this is a couple of statistics from a recent Pulse of the Region survey that the Detroit, Michigan MPO put together. SEMCOG is a very active member in our CVAV working group, and so I thank them for that and also sharing the survey with our members. But when you see the manufacturer's timeline, you also have to kind of take into account the fact that, as this survey noted, there's a little bit of hesitation. There's a little bit of apprehensive perception in terms of trusting such technologies. And then there is also, this cost concern. A lot of this will be rolled out, and folks are a little concerned that it won't be made available to everyone, and so that's also something to take into consideration. And this is a slide from some of you folks may have actually participated in this. It was an NCHRP finding snapshot that we sent out along with AASHTO NARC and NATO over the summer, and this was just an interesting statistic that I pulled out going back to elected officials and decision makers and where folks stand on integrating this into the planning process in your state or region. And so this is another from the planning snapshot. When we first met back in April of 2017 as a group, one of our working group members was reminded of the quote by Lee Iacocca, either lead, follow, or get out of the way. And so when you're thinking through, the early adopters, the leaders, those that are actively engaged and the passively engaged, that certainly relates back to the small versus large MPOs. You're seeing a lot of the larger MPOs be at the forefront of this, developing partnerships with folks like Waymo and some of these other technology firms that are kind of getting way out ahead. Whereas some of the smaller MPOs, as I mentioned, just due to lack of resources and staff, they're more kind of following and looking to the larger MPOs to provide some of that guidance. So back to our meetings. Our second meeting, as I mentioned, was in conjunction with AASHTO and the state DOTs, and we talked about coordination with other agencies and risk management. Here are a handful of topics that were identified, and I won't get into the details now just to be respectful of time. All of this is available on our website, so I'll be sure to share that link. Our third meeting was looping in the federal perspective, as I mentioned, and we were fortunate to meet with all of these offices and hear what they're doing so that we can make sure that we're better coordinating with our federal partners on all of these issues. And as part of our third meeting, we also were fortunate to develop a stakeholder roundtable conversation. Many of the folks that are presenting today or are on the phone today were in the room for that conversation. And I apologize for leaving Virginia off the list. Virginia Langham was a part of that conversation, and we appreciate her participation. And so as I mentioned, the fourth and final meeting will be in early 2018, and we're hoping to loop in the private sector and discuss potential coordination and collaboration. As I mentioned, all of the white papers and meeting materials from each of our meetings are currently available on the website. And all of the white papers will culminate into what we're hoping to put together as a framework for all MPOs. We certainly realize that this is a very fluid conversation and things change very quickly, but we're aiming to put together a basic framework that MPOs will be able to take a look at as they're thinking about how to integrate this into the LRTP and TIP. And then, as I mentioned, the symposium that we will be putting together, all of the details will be posted on the website, and we'll certainly make sure to get that information over to Virginia and Tony once we have the details. Just a couple more related activities. I know that there are all kinds of panels going on at CRB related to this issue, but two that AMPO will be involved in will be the War Games workshop on Sunday. There will be an MPO team, a state DOT team, among many others. And then ADA 20 is sponsoring a presentation and roundtable workshop on Monday. It'll be a two-part workshop that I hope will be very exciting for folks. So keep an eye out for those. And with that, I will turn it back over to Virginia.
Okay, thank you, Bill. That was a great presentation. I do have one question that has come in that I wanted to ask you. The question is, which MPOs do you know of that have formal partnerships with OEMs on CV/AV initiatives? Are you aware of any?
I don't want to say formal. Perhaps I misspoke a little bit there, but I do know that the MPO in Phoenix, Maricopa Association of Governments, and the MPOs in Dallas, as well as Orlando, are working very closely with various companies and organizations that are pushing out things such as shared mobility, automated and connected shared mobility, and others. So I don't know necessarily of any formal partnerships, but I do know that folks are working very closely with various companies on the issue in those cities.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks so much. With that, we're going to move on to our next speaker. Trish Hendren is the Executive Director of the I-95 Corridor Coalition, a partnership of over 100 state transportation agencies, toll authorities, and public safety organizations from Maine to Florida who keep people and goods moving throughout one of the world's busiest transportation corridors. Under Trish's leadership, the coalition has embarked on enhanced initiative related to incident management, traveler information, supply chain performance, freight planning, truck parking, toll reciprocity, connected and autonomous vehicles, and funding alternatives. Trish brought to the coalition extensive work with state DOTs, MPOs, and transit agencies to turn data into useful information, implement data-based decision-making, and demonstrate the value of transportation investments. Trish is actively involved with Transportation Research Board, chairing or serving on various committees, research panels, and conference planning efforts. Trish also serves on the ENO Board of Advisors and received the WTS DC Chapter 2014 Women of the Year Award. She holds a PhD in Transportation Technology and Policy, and a master's degree in Ag Econ, both from UC Davis, and a BA in English from Duke University. Trish, I'll hand it over to you now.
Great, thanks, Virginia. And moving from Bill's national review, I wanted to talk this morning, or this afternoon, depending on where you are, about connected and automated vehicles from an East Coast perspective. And for those of you on the webinar who may not be familiar with the I-95 Corridor Coalition, we are a partnership organization that stretches from Maine to Florida with over 100 members, including state DOTs, MPOs, toll authorities, transit, law enforcement, motor vehicle, railroads, and public safety officials. So we truly are embrace kind of a multimodal, multi-jurisdictional, multidisciplinary approach. And for the past 25 years, what we've been focused on, looks like my slide, hold on a second. I'm going to move forward just a little bit. Crazy here. Okay. There we go. For the past 25 years, we've been really focused on improving the passenger and freight movement along the East Coast by bringing people together through forums to address transportation issues, to establish this network of transportation professionals and provide training. We also are really focused on supporting data acquisition and tool development. In essence, as Virginia said, my confession to everybody is I'm a total data hound. This is my passion. We have a lot of data. More and more is getting created every day. And how do we turn that data into information is something that I myself personally and the coalition have spent quite a lot of time focused on. The other area that's how we try to address improving the movement of freight and passengers along the East Coast is basically pulling more resources into the East Coast area. So by competing for grants, our staff serves as an extension of the agency staff as needed. We partner with USDOT to explore policy implementation. And what I like to say about the coalition, because AMPO is another group that brings people together. RITSMO is another effort that brings people together to share best practices. And I think with the coalition, what we try to really focus on is how to get those sticky issues kind of across the finish line. And unlike our name suggests, we actually don't focus on the interstate. We don't focus on I-95. What we originally were going to be called the Atlantic Coast Coalition, but unfortunately ACC, acronym had already been taken. Go Blue Devils. I think you heard Virginia say I went to Duke, so I have to say that. It's part of my part of graduating from there. You have to do that. So instead of really focusing on the interstate, we focus on three areas. So operations, making more efficient, safer use of existing infrastructure. Freight, one of our hallmark programs is our Freight Academy, and also innovation. And that's what I really want to focus on today. And innovation is kind of a catch-all for some of our activities, including toll violation enforcement reciprocity, mileage-based usage fee, and then the topic of today's webinar, which is connected automated vehicles. I'm going backwards in my slide here because the coalition, when we're approaching that innovation area, we really want to look at these currents and today's transportation landscape. And what I mean by that is, well, technology. So It truly is an exciting time to be in our field, and this technology tsunami that is headed towards us has such great potential for the data part that obviously warms my heart, but safety, efficiency, opportunity. We all know that automatic or autonomous vehicles is not a question of if, but when. And if you think about vehicle technology, it's really come a long way even today from that cruise control that used to get me back and forth to college. We have cars that park themselves, collision avoidance, blind spot detection. And on the technology front, it's also on our infrastructure. So ramp metering almost seems like this quaint technology when we are here working on traffic signal coordinations across huge metropolitan areas. So again, truly an exciting time to be in the field. So we think about that current of technology change. We also link it up to our customers who are changing. And right now, our customers are demanding more information faster. I'm sure folks on the webinar have some kind of device that either tracks how many steps they take, tracks how long or not that they sleep. A desire of people for information is growing. And how we interact with technology is also changing. So I have young children, and my 5-year-old will go up to Alexa and ask to play Kids Bop Radio on Pandora. Or my other daughter will ask Alexa how to spell Cinderella. So how we interact with technology is really going to change our relationship to transportation. And if you look at the ride-sharing push that's been happening in our country, according to Morgan Stanley, it took over 70 years for Toyota to become a $250 billion company. And they're predicting it'll take less than 7 years for a ride-sharing company to become a $250 billion business. So in this atmosphere, we have funding. Again, folks on the phone, we're trying to embrace technology, give our customers what we want, but we face funding challenges. Everyone knows that the federal gas tax hasn't been raised since 1993. We have more efficient vehicles, which is great for our wallet, not so great for funding our infrastructure system. And the average person using our infrastructure system doesn't know how much, or quite frankly, how little they are paying. So the reason why I went into all this is for the coalition, when we are approaching the topic of autonomous vehicles, connected vehicles, we want to think about where it comes from. And you'll kind of hear that theme throughout my comments this morning. We also feel that the intersection of these three trends is what's pushing the exploration of road user charges. And I would love to hear what folks on the phone are thinking, what else is going to come out of this area. So going for an example of how the coalition has tried to push innovation and explore this rapidly changing connected and autonomous vehicle space, we did have a workshop last week in which we got 16 states plus the District of Columbia together, and we're very focused on making sure we had a wide range of perspectives in the room. So we had engineers, operations, policy, planning, tolling, motor vehicles, and law enforcement. And I think as we all look going forward and embracing this technology tsunami and the implementation of connected autonomy in our field, this range of stakeholders, even beyond this range I have on the slide here, is going to be critical. So what did we do last week? A couple of key agenda items is we looked to our peers along the East Coast of what they have been doing. So we heard from Maryland, and we picked Maryland because they really have a comprehensive stakeholder outreach effort. So Christy Nizer for the Motor Vehicle Administration talked about how her department is leading that effort. She also shared how Maryland has effectively used an expression of interest, which they have on their website, to engage the private sector, to start the conversation of what investment and exploration do you want in the state of Maryland. From Connecticut, we heard about their recent efforts to pass a Public Act 1769 that really helped define the terms around automation and helped establish a state pilot program and also a legislative task force. From Virginia, who truly is one of our leaders in this area in our country, we heard from Rob Carey discussing what is necessary to be successful and to highlight a recent truck platooning demo that they had. And from Florida, we heard from Raj Panaluri, who talked about data needs, management, and sharing, and the communication requirements and options. So all excellent presentations that I really could not do justice here in the few minutes that I have, but all of their presentations and comments will be documented in a report that we will release early in the year. So we also did talk about barriers. It's inevitable that barriers come up or challenges come up regarding this area. For example, the struggle we have to keep our infrastructure in state of good repair. We've heard from the OEMs that they want to have infrastructure that's in a good state of repair, but we still struggle today to make sure that we are maintaining that. So we try to turn that challenge upside down and say, let's use the need of this technology for state of good repair to be a reason to actually argue for the resources that we need to keep our infrastructure in state of good repair. And we tried to take the barriers that were raised and continue to identify what can we do about it in that meeting. The meat of the workshop really was in these 4 areas. We dove deep into infrastructure as far as what infrastructure investments do we need to be enhanced for CAV, signals, line striping, easy pass transponders. What's going to change with our infrastructure regarding with connected automated vehicles? And also, how do we handle the unknowns? And the overarching message was lay a ton of fiber. Basically, even if you don't know what it's for, having conduits throughout our system is something that was clearly raised as a recommendation from that discussion. On the systems, data, communications, and networks, so each of these 4 areas were breakout groups. We had spent a couple hours in them and really shared the conversation and ideas that were generated in the workout groups and across the whole entire workshop. So it really was a great discussion in the systems data area about what data transportation agencies should ask for. And so braking, lights, wipers, traction. As we're talking to the private sector, we need to be very clear about what data we want from them and also be clear what data we don't want. So that is the individual personalized information. And also we want to make sure we remind everybody how we have data that's of value about our facilities, HOV, hot lanes, toll lanes, speed limits, work zones. So we also bring value to the table in the conversation with the private sector. On the education outreach, we're really talking about who is the most important stakeholders to engage, how to clarify state versus federal, and one interesting aspect of the stakeholders, I'm going to go a little bit faster through this for time, is this range of who's the lead. And you see we have operations, DMV, policy, planning. But as a little reminder, always on the axis of graph, this only goes up to 5. The point being, it's a big range, even from the group of 16 states that we had, who was leading, and even more insightful was who else is involved in people's efforts. So the purpose of the slide is not to read all these small words, but it's to say it is a wide range of people, from the Department of Aging, Department of the motor vehicles being a lead. It's just very important to think through who your stakeholders are. And we did gather some of this information, as you see in the bottom of the screen here, through a pre-workshop survey that we conducted. Another interesting aspect on the policy and planning front was we asked each state if you have passed connected automated vehicle legislation. As you can see the results here, we have a range. But what's interesting is comparing what we were told by our members from what is pretty much out there, and I've seen this graph many times, probably others in the webinar have as well, that has different results. And the main reason I'm bringing this up is terms matter, definitions matter, and I really applaud the pooled funds study group effort on CAV to come up with glossary of terms. So even when we're talking about what is legislation, and if it's enacted autonomous vehicle legislation, why is Virginia blue here, when part of their philosophy is to not have overly regulated environment. So I think it's just important for us to be careful when we're making sure we're talking about the same thing. One thing that was very unanimous, I would say more coalescing around agreement here, was why we're doing this. Safety, as you can see, was clearly a big reason why we're all embracing this technology. Improving mobility options is the second big reason, followed by expanded capacity. And what was interesting is all the way over on the right, talk of the town. And what we meant by that is, are you doing this just because everyone's talking about it? And the response was no. People are really embracing this technology because of the benefits it can bring. So what are we going to do next? Well, what we did is the folks who attended our workshop, we gave them a pat on the back and said, you guys are now a working group for the coalition, and we are tasked to make sure that we find a niche area, gaps in the work, that's a lot of work going on right now, that still needs to be filled. We have no desire to repeat what other folks are doing, and so that's the next task of that group, is to say, okay, what's a particular focus area in this very changing, challenging space that we can work on. And then we will summarize the workshop as far as the survey, highlights recent activities across across peer states, and also I think what's really interesting, a list of recommended initial steps. I get the question all the time, what should I do first? And what we really heard was identify your leader, review legislation, create a strategic vision, work on buy-in by developing education outreach material, and start small. So we want to make sure we get those recommendations out to a wide audience because I think a lot of folks are grappling with that question. Obviously, the meat of the meeting, talking about infrastructure, data, education, and policy, will document the recommendations from those breakout groups, and finally outline some regional steps. So that was kind of a lot, but we're very excited from the workshop that occurred last week and wanted to share just a couple insights from that meeting. And with that, I will turn it back over to Virginia.
Okay, thanks so much, Trish. That was a great presentation. I don't see any questions pop up, and just in the interest of time, I think we're going to move to our next speaker, Ed Allegre. Ed Allegre is a senior manager for LA Metro's Highway Program Intelligent Transportation Systems Group. Ed is currently leading connected vehicle efforts in the LA region, as well as good movement projects, and assists in the administration of Metro's call for projects for signal synchronization and bus speed improvement projects. He also manages Metro's Countywide Signal Priority Program and integrated corridor management projects in the region. Ed has over 16 years of experience in transportation planning, traffic engineering, and ITS. Prior to joining Metro, he was with Orange County Transportation Authority, managing freeway planning studies, corridor studies, and the master plan of arterial highways. Ed also worked on the private side as a consultant for over 9 years. Ed received his Master's of Science in Transportation Management from San Jose State University through the Mineta Transportation Institute. He has a bachelor's degrees in Sociology and Environmental Analysis and Design with a minor in Urban and Regional Planning from UC Irvine. Ed is on the board of Institute of Transportation Engineers Southern California section and is the president of the Orange County Traffic Engineering Council. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Ed.
Great. Thank you, Virginia, and good morning and good afternoon to those on the East Coast. Thank you for having me here today, and happy holidays. We're about a week away. So I wanted to touch up on LA's connected and automated vehicle efforts. You know, we've seen our past presenters reporting at a very high to corridor level now. I wanted to focus more on the county level and what we're doing here in LA County. So a little bit of background about LA. You know, we're over 4,000 square miles big. We work with 88 cities here in the county with unincorporated county areas, and all those areas are divided up into subregions. So, you know, we work with a lot of different agencies here in LA County as it relates to ITS. You know, we are also home to the two largest ports in the nation, the Port of LA and Long Beach. So a little bit about Metro. A lot of people think about Metro here in LA that, you know, we're just a transit provider for buses, light rail, and BRT, but you know, we're the county's regional transportation planning agency. So we have the authority to program regional transportation funds. We also have 4 sales tax towards transportation here, which we're administering. And we also operate the express lanes, or Southern California 511, and our regional integration of ITS, RITS. So as I mentioned, Metro, we administer 4 sales taxes here, listed here right below, and these are all for our about half-cent sales tax for a total of 2 cents. And we have about $802 million annually for each of the sales tax that we administer. As it relates to ITS and connected vehicles, automated vehicles, Prop C, Measure R, and Measure M are the 3 sales tax measures that can be used towards these types of technologies. So as far as our building blocks here as we move into a connected automated vehicle world, these are the areas that I'll be touching up on today as it relates to CVAV. I'll go into them more later, but I want to start off with our Countywide Signal Priority Program, which I administer here at Metro. It's one of the first CV type of deployments in the nation about 15 years ago, where we're using 2.4 Wi-Fi to communicate from the bus to the intersection. During its time, we've had about 20 agency partners that we're working with, along with 6 municipal bus operators that are using our architecture. And it's about a $40 million program. So since it's been quite some time that we've deployed this technology, we've also looked at next generation BSP technologies since we're moving into a CVAV world. We did this study about about a year ago. We just wrapped it up a few months ago, but we looked at all areas of how we would transform our BSP here in the county. We looked at V2I as using DSRC. We looked at a centralized system, and we also looked at a BSP as a service, a cloud-based solution that we tend to have favored more because of its cost. One thing that's mentioned about is funding and cost of expanding to CVAV, where if we were to do that with our Signal Priority Program with at least DSRC, that's a very hefty price tag for us. So that was not under consideration as far as here in LA. The next program that was mentioned, our Signal Sync and Bus Speed Improvement Program, that's mainly funded by our Prop C half-cent sales tax, where we use ITS and other technologies to improve our arterial traffic flow. We've had this program for quite some time, since the 90s, but again, this is how we start looking at CVAV here in LA and try to find some local champions or agencies that would like to test out these types of technologies. And these 4 bullet points are the different areas of eligible projects for our program. So to date, we've funded about $1.16 billion overall to the program. We have about $28 million annually allocated, and we've completed over 150 projects with our program, and we have about 36 future projects where I'm anticipating that cities will be looking at more at CVAV just to improve their communications or at least their traffic control systems. So with over $1 billion invested into the county, we wanted to see about a few years back, we wanted to see where we are with our ITS assets in the county, and come up with a inventory tool, which we called ITS First, Field Inventory Resource Sharing Tool, to keep track of what we've invested in, and just build an overall inventory database so that if we ever needed to go back and look at it, we have it available. We could create inventory maps, and it would be beneficial to our partner agencies to use this tool to keep up with their own assets, or even have a repository for all their documents. So again, we're in the process of fine-tuning our tool here, but as I said, the tool is mainly for us to track our return on investment in the program, respond to any requests that we have from either agencies or even from elected officials. It was used to position ourselves for grant funding, so if we knew what was out there, or if we knew that some systems were antiquated, we could always look and try to pull together a project with our partners, or even agencies talking with other agencies. They could use this tool to set themselves up for funding opportunities. But as this tool was progressed and as we got more information, I think that we realized this is a great tool to assess what are capabilities and what's the maturity of our systems for connected and automated vehicles, and also integrated coordinate management strategies, which we have an interest here in LA. So yeah, it really evolved into a tool that we could use. So what we're doing now is we're developing a new user interface of the tool, and we'll look and see where the gaps are in the county as far as the equipment. As it relates to CVAV, one main area is communication. So we're going to look and see where the gaps are in the communications, so that we could further assess how ready we are. We're also in the process of conducting a regional transportation system operations analysis. Again, looking at the capabilities and maturity of the region, but mostly looking at ICM strategies as we have future funding here in the county. We can't build ourselves out of congestion. That's why we're looking at ITS and CVAV. And then lastly, using this tool to do a connected vehicle, automated vehicle readiness study, just so that agencies know where they are and how they fit into this future of technology. Another area where we focus on here in LA, as I mentioned, we're home to the two largest ports. We have about 40% of the nation's imports coming in and out of our ports. And we have the 710 freeway that is the gateway of in the nation of how these goods move in and out of the region. We're looking at different technologies to reduce the congestion and air quality in LA County. So quite a few years back, Metro and the Gateway Cities Council of Governments developed the technology plan for goods movement, which I'll touch up on now, where they came up with 7 different technology projects or concepts to move forward here in the county. The highlighted ones are the ones that we've moved forward with pilot projects in cooperation with our partners and our agencies. We looked at connected commercial vehicle automation of platooning. We looked at freight traveler information dissemination and container moves productivity. And those came out of 3 projects, which I'll go through now. One, which was led by FHWA, the FREIGHTIS program, Freight Advanced Traveler Information System, which uses information at the ports and at the trucking companies to optimize drayage or freight container movements in and out of the ports. So FHWA went through 2 phases of the project, and it showed some great benefit here in the region. The next project was the partial automation of truck platooning, which was FHWA funded, and that was a grant that was led by Caltrans and PATH, along with Volvo and Cambridge Systematics, where we'd use cooperative adaptive cruise control for platooning trucks. And we just completed a demo here in the LA region, not just completed, but we did a demo back in March of 2017. I know there was a demo out in the East Coast in September, but again, it was this project was more using DSRC and to reduce energy consumption and improve traffic flow. So with the success of these pilot projects, we here in LA, we pursued a lot more grant or funding opportunities with our partners. So we partnered with the Port of LA for our California Energy Commission grant to expand FREIGHTIS, the program that I just talked about. But in addition to that, we wanted to look at connected vehicle applications. So we're looking at doing an eco-drive application where we would install that in our trucks and using SPAT data to provide driver feedback to our trucking agencies here, our trucking companies here, to advise the driver when to accelerate or decelerate at an intersection. Our next project here is, again, we got awarded one of the first ATC MTD grants here in LA to modernize the Freitas Freitas program, or the application here. So we are working with FHWA in starting this project, hopefully here in the next few months. But we will also be looking at connected automated vehicle technologies as it relates to freight trucks. So here are a few options that we're looking at. Again, getting ready for CV here in LA. We're also, we're looking at CVAV exploration, but we want to do more outreach to our local agencies here, because a lot of the agencies either don't have a lot of knowledge about CVAV, or they are caught up with their regular O&M. So, we've been pursuing federal and state grant opportunities for connected vehicles. We teamed up with a statewide team here for One California to go after the CV pilots, ATC MTD, and also through our California Air Resources Board and California Energy Commission. But, we work a lot with our locals for our call for projects, so there's a lot of local pilots that are going on using our local funds and just dabbling in the field of DSRC, PET-SIG, or even just doing transit signal priority is what we're trying to test out here. And then lastly, I want to go into the Coalition for Transportation Technology. Again, with the relationships we have here with our local agencies, we capitalize on that to form a coalition of public agencies to advance technology and ITS. So this coalition, which includes Caltrans District 7, Metro, LA County Department of Public Works, LA DOT, and SCAG, we meet on a monthly basis to talk about technologies, CVAV or ITS, and strategize together how we could advance these types of technologies in the region. So activities to date, our coalition was announced back in November of 2015 by Mayor Garcetti as it kicked off the LA Auto Show. We have a signed charter that was signed back in May of 2016, and we developed a strategic action plan back in December 2016 where we identified near, midterm, and long-term goals and our objectives. So in the strategic plan, we're looking at the different areas how to advance technology. So again, funding and procurement, I think that's a major, it could be a roadblock here in government. How are we going to deal with our procurement procedures? Project as far as deployments, we want to be able to deploy. So each agency is looking at a specific area of deployment. And planning and policy, we're both Metro and SCAG, we are updating our regional ITS architecture to address CVAV. So that was the first step for us as a region. LA DOT is developing their own AV strategic or business plan. And then ultimately, Metro will do a countywide CVAV plan where it will come up with strategies on how to deploy CVAV. And so what our vision is here in LA is, again, one thing that we are concerned about is the interoperability when it comes to CVAV. So, updating our regional ITS architecture locally here and also with an MPO level, that must be the first step, because when CVAV comes to the region, we may want to make sure everyone is interoperable or at least on the same page. As I mentioned, our ITS First tool, we would like to keep that updated so that we could know how ready or what our capabilities are for CVAV in the region, and come up with a strategic plan and a readiness study so that with all the information we have, so that we could prepare ourselves in the region. Because again, we're a big region of 88 local cities and the county. We want to be ready, have that interoperability, and and ultimately keep on doing pilot deployment projects here as it relates to CV. We are going to continue to monitor CV-AV programs, policies, and funding. Again, last week we held an AV policy summit here in LA where we talked about policies in different areas of autonomous vehicles. So that was a good 2-day workshop for people of different backgrounds to talk about AV. And then lastly, coordination with our local agencies, even interagencies outside of LA, and then the private industry to see what their interests or what they're doing in CV-AV. We talk to our vendors regularly and see what they have to offer. And as a coalition, we actually, after the ITS California annual meeting, we did go up to the Momentum Station up in Contra Costa County to talk about partnerships and see how we could leverage each other for CV-AV efforts here in LA and in the state. So again, we're trying to be proactive here in LA and help our local agencies. And with that, thank you again for having me present on what LA is doing, and I'll glad to take any questions.
All right. Thank you, Ed. This is Tony Cradfield again. I appreciate all the presenters' presentations today. I think this was very informative. Ed, we had one very quick question from the audience just asking if there is a report or results that you can share from your study of the different approaches, V to I, V to X, and so forth. I don't know that we have much time to really address it, but is there anything out there that we could share with folks afterwards?
Yeah, so I see Ben. Ben, that study was more just looking at the technology and what other transit agencies are doing in the nation. We could talk more offline, Ben, about what came out of the study. We don't have results as far as, I'm not quite sure what type of results you're looking for, but we could talk offline if you want to contact me.
Great. Thank you. We're a little past our hour here, so unfortunately I don't think we'll be able to take any additional questions right now, but this was a great set of presentations, and I encourage our audience to follow the work of AMPO, the I-95 Coalition, and the LA metro area, as well as other groups around the country, because there is certainly a lot of activity and interesting things as we develop our knowledge and skill sets in being ready for a connected and automated vehicle environment. So thank you to our presenters today. Thank you all for your participation in the audience and your interest in this topic. I hope it was a worthwhile experience for you. As we conclude, for any of you who are attending the TRB annual meeting in Washington, D.C. from January 7 through 11, 2018, we invite you to join us for our related committee and subcommittee meetings. The full Richmo Standing Committee meets on Wednesday, January 10th, from 10:15 in the morning until noon, and then again from 2:30 to 6 p.m. in the afternoon. And the Richmo Subcommittee on Connected and Automated Vehicles meets Monday, January 8th from 3:45 to 5:30 p.m. Please check your TRB annual meeting program for meeting room locations and other details, as well as other Richmo Subcommittee meetings and Richmo-sponsored events. And if you've not already done so, I encourage you to visit the National Operations Center of Excellence website. That's www.transportationops.org, and follow the center on social media. At the website, you will find news and resources on all things related to TSMO, and you can register with the center to receive newsletters and notices of future events. Thank you all for your participation today. Hope everyone has safe and happy holidays. This concludes today's webinar.